So in this video, I'm going to talk through the poem Search for My Tongue and talk about some of the maybe strong points on language and structure that you could talk about and make points of comparison to Half Caste if you were to get a question on the theme of identity. Okay, so before I delve into the poem, just some context, which you'll already have read anyway in the slides beforehand. The theme of the poem is thinking about her loss of identity, heritage, culture, from moving from India and then immigrating to England. She does have a sense of loss. Okay, now she has to live in a new country. There's new laws, new customs, new culture, and that's what the poem is thinking about. Okay, you asked me what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. I ask you, what would you do if you had two tongues in your mouth and lost the first one, the mother tongue, and could not really know the other, the foreign tongue? You could not use them both together, even if you thought that way. And if you lived in a place you had to speak a foreign tongue, your mother tongue would rot and die in your mouth until you had to spit it out. I thought I spit it out, but overnight while I dream. Right, okay. So all the way through, we've got this extended metaphor of the loss of her tongue. So she seems quite regretful. And I think it grows in severity almost, the fact that there's a sense of loss, but then talks towards the end about it rotting and dying. So it becomes more graphic. Although it's talking about the loss of her tongue being a metaphor for the loss of her mother tongue, which is the first language that she could speak, it signifies more than that as well. It's also about as I've already said, the loss of her heritage too. So when she says you could not use them both together, even if you thought that way, when she's talking about the languages, maybe that's her talking about her mixed identity and mixed heritage as well. As in she can't have her Indian and her English heritage existing at the same time, which seems to be causing her, I guess, confusion with her identity. Okay, in ways which it might be similar to Half Caste then, he's also the same. Well, maybe not that he feels that way, but that's what is imposed upon him. The term Half Caste, as if he is only half a person. Maybe that stems from him having a mixed heritage too. The opening then, how that could be similar to Half Caste. You asked me what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. In Half Caste, the opening being explain yourself. So both of them use direct address, but it's also as if they're in the middle of a conversation almost as well, and they're stopping to think about it further. Where Half Caste though is quite confrontational and quite aggressive, Search for My Tongue I think is different. It's almost like she's stopping to contemplate it, and maybe it's that she's having this battle with her own identity, not the way somebody else is making her feel. Also, she could be speaking to other people who are bilingual, other people who have had to immigrate, and if they also have this same feeling. As you can see here in the glossary for the word foreign, which I think is spelled incorrectly. No? So of, from, in, or characteristic of a country or language other than your own. So we would probably all know what foreign means. It could be foreign person, meaning that they're from a different country. But it also means, if you were talking to me, say, about the offside rule, that would be foreign to me because I just don't understand it. I don't have a clue. So even though it might seem so simple to you, it wouldn't to me. So foreign also means strange or unfamiliar. So even though she is talking about her foreign tongue because it's, I don't know, maybe it's not her first language, it's still the fact that even though she might be fluent in England, she lives in England, she is English every single day, it's still foreign to her, it's still strange and unfamiliar, and she seems to long to speak her mother tongue. So although she says here you could not use them both together, even though she can't use them simultaneously, she still has them both. They're both still in her mouth. Even if they're both battling, they're both still there. However, as it goes on, it says then, and if you lived in a place you had to speak, your mother tongue would rot and die in your mouth. So that might be suggesting that the longer that she's away from where she's from, the longer that she's around people speaking English, the more that her mother tongue is going to die and rot in her mouth. So rot again down here means to decay. So she has a sense of maybe hopelessness and frustration that she feels maybe she's ultimately going to lose her ability to speak that language. Even if it's not that she forgets how to speak it, but almost as if it's going to become, I don't know, outdated or maybe unacceptable. We don't know, but it's a sense that she's not going to use it anymore. And she's really saddened, frustrated, angered by that. But notice there is a shift in tone here. The word but. Okay, so just as she feels that it's dying in her mouth, she's having to spit it out. But overnight while I dream. Okay, again, the word dream is also used in half caste. Normally to have a dream, I don't know, it has positive connotations, it's hopeful. So yeah, that signals now that there's going to be a change. I'm just going to skip over this slide for now because I'm going to come back to it when we think of the overall form and structure of the poem. But be thinking, why include her mother tongue in the centre of the poem? Okay, so now let's look at the next stanza. It grows back. The stump of a shoot grows longer, grows moist, grows long veins. It ties the other tongue in knots. The bud opens in my mouth. It pushes the other tongue aside. Every time I think I've forgotten, I think I've lost the mother tongue, it blossoms out of my mouth. Right, okay. There is definitely a shift in tone, a shift in attitude in this stanza. Where in the first one, it's all about her sense of loss, her frustration, the fact that she feels that it's rotting and dying. So we've got this graphic, disturbing image. This is completely different. It's so much more hopeful. Another theme that could come up could be the theme of hope. Is now, rather than the extended metaphor of the loss of her tongue, we have the extended metaphor of a flower that is budding. So she's used, think, why use a flower to signify the growth of her mother tongue? If you think about flowers, so the flowers might signal rebirth, might signal growth. Also, that process is a natural process, as if to signify or reflect how she feels that her mother tongue is what's natural to her. So yeah, I think it's quite a pretty image to show that. So, although she did initially speak about the death, I guess the life and death of her mother tongue is juxtaposed all of the way through. But here, so when signifying the flower, is about rebirth. Or maybe the fact that it never did die. It was always there. However, she does make it sound here as if there's almost a battle between the two tongues, which I guess is to symbolise her own inner battle with maybe her conflicting sense of identity, heritage, cultures and customs. You could go on and on. But it says here the fact that it's growing stronger, which is herself. It's herself that's grown stronger, and actually realising just because I live in a different country doesn't mean that she has lost it. But it says that it ties the other tongue in knots. So in her foreign tongue, in knots, which again sounds quite graphic, as if there is a battle between the two. the bud opens in my mouth. It pushes the other tongue aside. So again, she did say earlier that they both can't exist, but they are both still there. But this is now her embracing her culture and identity, and remembers that it hasn't been lost. On a day-to-day basis, although she might have to use English, follow English customs, that doesn't mean that she's lost her identity or her heritage. Okay, what other questions have I got on the side? What tone does she use at the end? How does this contrast to the beginning? Okay, so at the beginning, I probably repeated this about 5 times now, but she's regretful, she has a sense of loss, she thinks that the mother tongue has died, but now that it blossoms out of my mouth. Okay, so way more hopeful, has much more positive connotations. Okay, at the bottom here, challenge, identify examples of assonance. I know that we haven't done poetry for a while, so you might have forgotten what some of the terms mean on here. Make sure that you're using your knowledge organizer to help you with that. Okay, so assonance is where you have got lots of vowel sounds. So A, E, I, O, U. If you look through here, even just to look at, I can see lots of O's. When you have sounds like O, oo, it actually takes longer to pronounce those words. They're like elongated. So even that in a sense is used to emphasize the growth and the fact that even as we speak it, it takes longer to say. Okay, so the shape basically means look at the layout of the poem. Sometimes there isn't really much to say, but sometimes it might have quite a unique layout. I think that Search for My Tongue and Half Caste both do. The fact that Half Caste has those half lines all the way through to reflect the whole theme of his poem. And then in here, the main thing being that she uses the mother tongue in the centre of the poem. And we're going to think about why might she do that. Okay, we also, here we've already spoken about the shift in tone, so I'm not going to go through that again. Free verse is where there's no, I guess, stable rhyme scheme, meter, pattern, which makes it quite conversational, which I guess suits a beginning where you ask me, okay, as if it is where joining a conversation, she's already halfway through, and also makes it quite intimate. Okay, so the main thing I'm going to focus on is why might she put this part in the middle? Okay, so what could that signify? Okay, one reason that she might do it is, although we've got the English on the outer side, having a mother tongue in the middle might show that because that is the central to her identity and her existence. Okay, and the fact that it is never going to be lost, it's always going to be there. No matter how she might feel like it's being pushed aside, like she has this battle, actually it's never going to go away. It's central to her, and it's always going to be within. However, an alternative interpretation could be that actually that being in the middle and the English being on the outer side, could be that the foreign tongue is consuming and suffocating the mother tongue in the middle. As we know, she has this battle between the two tongues, so that is also what that could signify. For each of the poems, a knowledge organiser has already been made. What I would do though is amend these, add your own points. As we come up with more and more perceptive points, then add those. I've put on here a link to extra reading for Search for My Tongue. That's got really good points about the attitude of the speaker, the context of the poem, the themes of the poem, and then also points on language and structure and form.